In 1987, a grandmother in a two-room apartment in Kowloon washed her spring onions, wrapped the roots in a damp paper towel, stood them upright in a glass jar with an inch of water, and put the whole thing on her windowsill. Those onions grew fresh green shoots for 6 weeks straight. She never bought spring onions again that year. The trick took her 45 seconds and cost absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, the average American household throws away $470 worth of fresh produce every single year. Cilantro that wilts in 3 days. Ginger that shrivels into a hard knot. Leafy greens that turn to black slime in the crisper drawer. The grocery industry has built its entire business model around you coming back twice a week because nothing lasts. They count on it. The refrigerators are designed for it. The packaging practically guarantees it. Coming up, you're going to learn the trick that keeps fresh ginger firm and usable for 4 months without a single spot of mold, the 30-second method that turns limp carrots crunchy again overnight, and the reason your grandmother could keep cilantro vibrant green for 3 weeks in a climate with no air conditioning while yours dies in a 72-degree kitchen after 5 days. These aren't hacks somebody invented for Instagram. These are survival techniques accumulated over generations in places where a bunch of cilantro cost half a day's wages and letting it rot was unthinkable. If you want to stop donating $500 a year to your garbage can, hit subscribe right now. Let's count down the 9 tricks that Asian grandmothers have been using for decades to make fresh groceries last 10 times longer than anything you're doing right now. Number 9. The glass jar spring onion method your Taiwanese grandmother used in the 1970s. She would come home from the market with a bundle of spring onions, roots still attached, dirt still clinging to the white parts. First move, she rinsed them under cold water, but she never cut the roots off. This is critical. Those roots are still alive. She took a clean glass jar, filled it with 1 inch of cold water, stood the onions upright in the jar with just the roots touching the water, and put the jar on the kitchen counter or windowsill. Every 2 days, she changed the water. That's it. Here's what happens. The roots keep growing. The green parts keep photosynthesizing. You're not storing a dead vegetable, you're keeping a living plant in suspended harvest. Within 3 days, you'd see fresh green shoots emerging from the center. She'd snip what she needed for cooking and the plant would just keep producing. 1 bunch from the market would give her fresh onions for a month, sometimes 6 weeks. In 1979, a bunch of spring onions in Taipei cost about 8 Taiwan dollars. Adjusted for wages, that's like spending $3 today. Nothing could be wasted. Now we buy spring onions in plastic-wrapped bundles, shove them in the crisper drawer, and watch them turn slimy in 4 days because we severed the roots and suffocated them in plastic. We've turned a living plant into a dying one and wondered why it doesn't last. Number 8. The paper towel leafy green technique from every Korean household in the 1980s. Your Korean grandmother bought spinach, lettuce, or any leafy green from the market. It came in a loose bundle, no packaging, often still wet from the vendor's morning rinse. She never put it directly in the refrigerator wet. Instead, she spread the greens on a clean cotton towel or several sheets of paper towel. She let them air dry for 20 minutes, just until the surface moisture was gone but the leaves were still cool. Then she wrapped the whole bundle loosely in fresh dry paper towels, put that bundle in a breathable cloth bag or open plastic bag, and stored it in the crisper drawer. The mechanism is moisture management. Leafy greens need humidity to stay crisp, but they cannot sit in wetness. Wetness means bacterial growth. Bacterial growth means black slime and that smell you know. The paper towel wicks away excess surface moisture while the loose wrapping maintains enough humidity to prevent wilting. It's a buffer system. She'd check the paper towel every 3 days, and if it felt damp, she'd swap it out for a fresh one. Result: crisp, bright greens for 2 to 3 weeks. Compare that to the 5 days you get when you shove a wet plastic clamshell into your fridge. In Seoul in 1985, a bundle of spinach cost about 200 won. For context, that was the price of a bowl of soup. You did not let a bowl of soup rot in your kitchen. These days, we buy spring mix in a plastic box, never open it, and find it liquefied 6 days later because the packaging traps moisture and the greens drown in their own respiration. Number 7. The rice storage trick for fresh herbs that Vietnamese families used in subtropical heat with no refrigeration. This one sounds strange until you understand the science. Your Vietnamese grandmother in Saigon in the 1960s had fresh cilantro, mint, or basil. The temperature outside was 90 degrees. She had no air conditioning, and her refrigerator, if she had one, was the size of a dorm mini fridge. She took a wide-mouthed container, filled the bottom with a half-inch layer of uncooked rice, placed the fresh herbs on top of the rice with stems down, and covered the whole thing loosely with a damp cloth. She kept it in the coolest, darkest spot in the house, usually a tile floor under a table. The rice is a desiccant. It absorbs excess moisture from the air and from the herbs, preventing rot. But the damp cloth on top maintains just enough humidity to keep the leaves from crisping up. You're creating a microclimate. The herbs stay fresh, green, and fragrant for 10 to 14 days in 90-degree heat with no electricity. In Saigon in 1968, a bunch of cilantro cost about 5 dong. Median income was maybe 300 dong a month. That bunch of cilantro represented real money. Now we put cilantro in the fridge, forget about it, and it's black mush by Thursday. Modern refrigerators are too dry for delicate herbs and too cold. They freeze the cell walls, rupturing them. Your grandmother's rice jar outperformed your $400 Samsung crisper drawer. Let me pause the countdown here because there's a pattern forming that you need to see. Almost every modern kitchen appliance and storage product is designed to look efficient and sell units, not to actually preserve food the way humans preserved it for thousands of years. A 2019 study from the Natural Resources Defense Council found that refrigerator crisper drawers, as designed by most manufacturers, actually accelerate spoilage for over 60% of produce items because they trap ethylene gas and maintain improper humidity. Your grandmother wasn't smarter than a scientist. She just didn't have a profit motive confusing her common sense. The next few tricks are going to prove that even more. Number 6. The newspaper ginger wrap method used across China, Japan, and Korea since at least the 1950s. Fresh ginger root. You buy a knob of it, use a tablespoon for a stir fry, then put the rest in the crisper drawer. 10 days later it's a shriveled, moldy rock. Your grandmother took that same knob of ginger, left it completely unwashed, wrapped it tightly in newspaper or plain brown paper, and stored it in a cool, dry cupboard. Not the fridge. The cupboard. Ginger is a rhizome. It's a storage organ. It wants to stay dormant. Refrigerators introduce moisture and temperature fluctuations every time you open the door. That moisture triggers mold. The paper wrap does two things. It absorbs any surface moisture and it blocks light, which prevents sprouting. Kept in a dark, dry, cool spot, wrapped in paper, ginger stays firm, fragrant, and usable for 3 to 4 months. No mold. No shriveling. In rural Taiwan in 1960, a piece of ginger the size of your fist cost about 6 yuan. That was 2 hours of farm labor. You did not let 2 hours of labor grow mold. Today, we put ginger in a plastic bag in the fridge because that's what feels hygienic and modern. The plastic traps condensation. The ginger rots. We've made it worse by trying to make it better, and the grocery stores love it because you'll buy ginger 3 times a month instead of once a season. Number 5. The sand burial method for root vegetables that Chinese grandmothers used before anyone had a basement. Carrots, daikon radish, beets. Your grandmother bought them with the greens still attached. She cut the greens off immediately, within an hour of getting home, because greens keep pulling moisture and nutrients out of the root even after harvest. Then she took a wide clay pot or wooden box, filled it with clean, slightly damp sand, buried the root vegetables completely in the sand so they weren't touching each other, and kept the container in the coolest part of the house. This mimics underground storage. Root vegetables evolved to survive underground through winter. The sand maintains consistent humidity, prevents light exposure, blocks airflow that causes dehydration, and keeps them at a stable temperature. Carrots stored this way stay crunchy and sweet for 2 to 3 months. Daikon stays firm for 6 weeks. A 2014 study from a Korean agricultural university tested this exact method against refrigeration. The sand-buried roots retained 92% of their vitamin C content after 8 weeks. The refrigerated ones retained 67% and had significant texture degradation. Your grandmother wasn't guessing. She was replicating the natural environment of the vegetable. In rural China in 1955, a pound of carrots cost about 12 fen. Monthly income for a family might be 30 yuan, so 12 fen was real money. And because refrigerators didn't exist for most people, this wasn't a trick. It was the only way. Now we put carrots in a plastic bag in the crisper drawer and they go limp and white in 2 weeks. We've ignored thousands of years of food preservation wisdom because we assume technology is always superior. Number 4. The saltwater revival trick for limp vegetables that Japanese grandmothers used to rescue day-old market produce. You've seen this. You bought carrots, celery, or cucumbers. You left them in the fridge for a week. Now they're bendy. Limp. Technically still edible but texturally depressing. Your grandmother had a trick. She filled a bowl with cold water, added a tablespoon of salt per quart of water, and submerged the limp vegetables completely for 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how far gone they were. Here's the science. Vegetables go limp because they've lost turgor pressure. That's the water pressure inside their cells that keeps them rigid. Soaking them in plain water can rehydrate them a little, but it's slow because of osmosis dynamics. Adding salt creates a salinity gradient that actually pulls water into the cells faster and more completely. It's the same principle as brining meat. After an hour in salt water, a limp carrot comes out snappy and crunchy again. Not quite as good as fresh, but 90% of the way there. Your Japanese grandmother in Osaka in 1970 would go to the market late in the day when vendors sold wilted vegetables at half price. She'd bring them home, salt-soak them, and serve them that night as if they were fresh. She cut her vegetable budget in half using a trick that took zero skill and cost a few cents worth of salt. Now we throw away limp carrots and buy new ones because we've been taught that once vegetables lose crunch, they're garbage. That belief costs the average household $120 a year in discarded produce. Number 3. The breathable bag and darkness rule that applies to almost everything and almost nobody follows anymore. This isn't one specific trick. It's the underlying principle your grandmother applied to tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, zucchini, and anything that continues ripening after harvest. She never stored these in plastic. She never stored them in bright light. She used cloth bags, paper bags, or woven baskets, and she kept them in a dark cupboard or under the sink. Here's what's happening. Most vegetables and fruits respire. They take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, ethylene gas, and moisture. When you trap them in plastic, you trap all those gases. Ethylene accelerates ripening and then rot. The moisture has nowhere to go, so you get condensation, which means mold. Bright light continues photosynthesis in some vegetables, which breaks down sugars and changes texture. A breathable container in a dark spot allows gas exchange and moisture evaporation while blocking light. Tomatoes stored this way stay firm and flavorful for 2 weeks. Stored in plastic on the counter in sunlight, they go mealy and split in 5 days. Peppers last 3 weeks in a paper bag in a cupboard. In plastic in the fridge, they get soft spots and wrinkle in 10 days. In Hong Kong in 1982, a single tomato could cost $3 Hong Kong. Average hourly wage was maybe $15. A tomato was 12 minutes of work. You managed that tomato like it mattered. Today, we buy tomatoes in a plastic clamshell, leave them on a sunny counter, and they're split and leaking by the weekend. The packaging that makes them convenient to buy is specifically engineered to make them rot faster, so you buy more. And we've accepted it as normal. Number 2. The vinegar wash that stops mold before it starts, used by Filipino and Thai grandmothers in tropical climates where mold is constant. Your Southeast Asian grandmother lived in 85% humidity. Mold was not a possibility, it was a certainty. Before she stored any fresh produce, especially berries, grapes, or anything with a skin, she washed it in a diluted vinegar solution. 1 part white vinegar to 3 parts water. She dunked the produce, swirled it gently for 30 seconds, then rinsed it in clean water and let it dry completely on a towel before storing. The vinegar kills mold spores and bacteria on the surface of the produce. Most spoilage starts from microbes that hitched a ride from the field or the market. If you kill them before storage, you've bought yourself an extra week or 2. A 2015 study from a food science lab in Thailand tested this on strawberries. Vinegar-washed strawberries stayed mold-free for 14 days. Unwashed strawberries showed visible mold in 4 days. In Manila in 1975, a small basket of berries was a luxury. It cost 20 pesos when daily wage labor earned 30. You did not let 20 pesos grow mold. The vinegar cost almost nothing. Now we're told to never wash berries until we're ready to eat them because moisture causes mold. That's true if you leave them wet. Your grandmother washed and dried them. She removed the mold before it could start. We skip that step, and our berries are fuzzy with mold by midweek. The difference is 1 minute of effort and a tablespoon of vinegar. And now, number 1. The real trick your Asian grandmother knew that made all the others work. It's not the glass jar or the paper towel or the vinegar wash. It's this: she knew where every single thing came from and what it was trying to do. She knew a spring onion is a living plant and living plants need roots and water. She knew ginger is a dormant storage organ and dormant things want darkness and dryness. She knew leafy greens are 90% water and water management is everything. She knew berries mold because they're covered in spores and spores die in acid. She didn't have the internet. She didn't have food science degrees. She had a relationship with her ingredients. She touched them, smelled them, watched them, learned their rhythms. And because produce was expensive relative to income, she had a financial incentive to pay attention. In most Asian countries in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, fresh vegetables were 10 to 20% of household income. Now in America, it's under 6%. We don't notice when we waste it because it doesn't hurt enough. The entire modern food system is designed around the assumption that you'll waste 30 to 40% of what you buy. Supermarkets overstock because they know half of it will be tossed. Refrigerators are built with crisper drawers that don't actually work because if they did, you'd shop less often. Packaging is engineered to look fresh on the shelf, not to preserve freshness at home. Your grandmother operated in a different economy. Food was precious. Waste was failure. So she learned how cucumbers behave, how cilantro breathes, how carrots stay alive even after harvest. That knowledge saved her thousands of dollars over a lifetime. Here's your challenge. This week, pick 3 of these tricks. Spring onions in a jar of water. Greens wrapped in paper towels. Ginger in newspaper in the cupboard. Try them. See what happens. Track how long things actually last compared to what you're doing now. Then come back and tell me in the comments, which trick shocked you the most? The spring onion regrowth or the limp carrot revival? I want to know which one you're going to use forever. Your grandmother knew this. You were never taught. Now you know too.